Hi, my name's Graham Nickerson, and I'm a South Shore, Nova Scotia boy. I grew up in Nova Scotia. I came from an economically disadvantaged segment of the population, and for me, there were very few opportunities, and I went away, and like lots of people do. I I would have to say that some issues there are lots of social issues in the area when I grew up, including a lot of violent coercion within a certain segment of the population that was directed at people who look like me, and but not only just that, other people, and amongst themselves, and so there is that thing in the society that people don't want to admit, but it's there. And to say that it wasn't there or that it's not there is, I mean, it's dishonest. You don't like I've said to somebody else, when two computer programmers get together and they don't disagree, they don't go out and slash each other's tires or burn the other person's house down. It's just not. It doesn't work. It's unprofessional. I mean, of course, it's unprofessional, but it's just not tolerated in a civil society. So, and so the reason why I'm making this video is I've had a lot of resentment. I mean, and you would too if you were me and you lived my experiences. And I'm not going to get into them, but they're violent and demeaning, and they were at the time tolerated, and people knew what was going on and did nothing about it. So, with that put aside, dealing with this issue between First Nation and commercial fishermen, it was a guy named Darren Porter, who I hope sees this sooner than later, that he opened my eyes and got me to really look at what are going to be the consequences if this situation continues and escalates and escalates and escalates. It's going to impact the people that I resent or have resented, but it's going to impact a lot of the people that I love. And so I've got over 20 years of marine science. I don't know everything. I'm not claiming to, but I've done a lot, including a lot of anthropological work and things like that too. Now I'm a member of the Atlantic Canada Studies Centre as a historian, and I thought that there may be some aspects of history and what has happened in the past, things like the Peace and Friendship Treaty, that people may not have a grasp of and may not read or understand these things well enough that they could use history lesson. I may not have all the answers, but I am colleagues with people who study this stuff every day, and I did talk a little bit about this issue tonight with a couple of them, and so we, just talking about the Peace and Friendship Treaty. This agreement never ceded land, right? It was between two separate nations, and it involved giving the British access to areas of Nova Scotia, really to trade. It was never intended for the territory to be colonized. But the British doing what the British do, they essentially started bringing in settlers without consultation with First Nations. We can look at the American Revolution as a parallel. The East India Company was formed to trade with India. Of course, everyone in the government had stocks in the East India Company. The East India Company reaches financial difficulties. They have to deal with that somehow. One of the things they do is mess around with taxes. I mean, there's still the 7 Years' War and those sorts of things, but what happens is that through political manipulation, the Americans are taxed and taxed and taxed, and it's to deal with essentially a corrupt relationship between the East India Company and the British government. And then what do we have? We have the American Revolution. So that ends up resulting in a whole bunch of other settlers leaving the U.S., the Loyalists coming to Nova Scotia, settling everywhere. And what happens? The government forms a bunch of landholding companies. Of course, all the government owns stock in these companies, and they take up huge tracts of land in the Maritimes that they have absolutely no entitled claim to. And and they drive First Nations away from the ocean and up into land that's marginal. So this is an issue, right? Like, one of the things that's come up with people is that they talk about why does that matter? Like, and that's why I name these, and hopefully this will be a number of things that we go through, and I hope to hear from people who want to know more, and I can ask my colleagues and get more information together. But basically, it's like, why do we care about this treaty? Why are we going back so far and honoring this stuff? Well, as it's been explained to me, is that every piece of legislation in British law piles up one on top of the other. And Canadian law, Canadian Constitution is piled up on top of that. And so you really, why it matters to you is you do not want to open up the Constitution to tinkering with and removing things, because it's like it's a pile. And if you start pulling stuff out of there, you don't know what the long-term consequences of that are going to be, right? Just like you look at the free trade agreement between the U.S. and Canada, and when Donald Trump decided that he wanted to change the agreement. Yeah, there may have been some things in there that needed to be modified, but you can't, it has consequences. It has consequences on people, and nobody wants to sit there and be like, I wonder what's going to happen with this guy changing agreements that we understand. So, that is the historical component that's as far as I'm going to go about it tonight. But you have to realize that in the bigger picture, the federal government is an extension of a colonial power, right? It was birthed out of Great Britain. Its philosophy is not, we live in a pretty good country, and people have rights. But it's also run by political animals who look at what is in my best interest. And right now that math is going on to figure out which way the wind's blowing and how this is going to fall on the government in power. So if it looks like the majority of Canadians will approve of the government taking a strong stance to protect the treaty, then that's what will happen. If it looks like the political damage is going to be much greater because Trudeau is too friendly with First Nations, then then things will be like they are now, slowly stepping along. So there are lots of other things that I've been talking to people about and aspects of this stuff, and I look to hear from other people to see if there are questions and how we can simplify this stuff and maybe create some maps, timelines, things like that, so that people who are interested and want to know more, they don't have to read a whole big collection of material. We'll just get some videos put together, and you can look at it on your phones or on your computers, and it'll help guys like Darren Porter who don't. There are plenty of people out there who could be doing this stuff, but it's hard for one person to take on all of this stuff and be on, especially if they're doing it for free. So hopefully, if a few people who know things and can share them and can pass along the knowledge to other people and make a positive change to confront operating from a position of ignorance and indifference and a propensity to solve issues with violence, then that's where we want to go, because we need to do something, and people need to change their attitudes before this all falls apart. Thank you.